Thank you so much for joining us. This building the community, building the awareness. So thank you again. And I will pass it on to you to basically opening up and talk about such a great topic like product ownership.
Okay, hi everyone. I want to welcome you to this session. I'm Bob Gallagher. I'm from Cary, North Carolina, and I'm an Agile coach down here. I've been doing it for a few years, and I want to share with you a talk that I've been doing for a little while called the What Does Good Look Like? The 4 Quadrants of Product Ownership. I've been using this as a model or a metaphor for quite a few years. The key point, and you'll see it as we go into the talk, is to talk about balance. I see a lot of imbalanced product owners, and I'll try to explain what that is, what I mean by that. And I want better balance in the craft of product ownership. So let's get started, and thank you for coming. Like I said, I'm Bob Galen. The most important thing to know about me on this slide is the fact that I'm an avid potato head collector, and I have way too many potato heads in my office for any one person. And my favorite potato head is the one here, Darth Tater, not Vader, Tater, T-A-T-E-R, Mr. Darth Tater to all of us. All right. So with respect to Darth, I want to give an homage to the taters of the world. Why quadrants? I've written a book on product ownership. The first edition was published in 2009. So that's over 10 years ago. And at the time, one of my motivations for writing the book was it was very misunderstood. There was very little guidance out there outside of the Scrum Guide. I don't even know if there was a Scrum Guide. There was maybe a loose Scrum Guide at that point. But there was not a lot of guidance around product ownership, and a lot of product owners were really struggling. I was working in a company where our product owners were struggling, and I saw it in the community. And so it was a misunderstood role, and I think it still is very much a misunderstood role. There's a notion of, do you outwardly face to the client, or do you inwardly face to the team? I think that's a dilemma, and how do you balance that? A lot of people, even to this day, ask me, is it a full-time role? Can I have a product owner who washes cars and takes care of the lawn and also does product ownership in their spare time? A lot of clients, and I'm like, no, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You are the leader, but at the same time, I think it's a real role that requires a lot of activity. It's nuanced. It's easy. I think it's easy to lose your balance. There's a notion of, can one person do it or not? We'll explore that a little bit, but I think that's why the quadrants exist. So we're going to explore each quadrant, and we're going to look at the balance across them. So for anyone who sort of is listening in, and this is going to be recorded, I want you to grab a piece of paper. It can be an electronic piece of paper, or my preference would be a physical piece of paper. And I want you to draw quadrants on it, which is just one line, just 2 lines. And I want you to get that ready. So get a pencil and just draw some lines. And I'm going to pause at each quadrant and ask you to assess how much time you're spending. So we're going to do a little bit of a quadrant analysis for each of you, and I'll explain that a little bit more as we flow. So this is the quadrants, and you can see there's a different view behind me. So it's really the same sort of quadrants, but each sort of view looks the same. The 4 quadrants are product management is one quadrant. Another one is project management. And people look at me sometimes when I'm talking to an agile audience and I mention the terms project management, everyone looks at me like I'm a little odd, and I am a little odd. So I'll explain what it means. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm not trying to, undermine agility. Leadership, I think there's a leadership quadrant, and then there's a business analysis quadrant, and we'll explore each one of these. So let's dive into the product management quadrant. And I want everyone to envision, I'm not trying to define this quadrant for you. I want you to get an essence of it in your context. If you're an active product owner, then look at it from the point of view of your job, your team or your organization or your product line or your value stream or whatever. If you're a consultant, then I actually want you to think about a client and sort of as a persona and get into your client and think about it from that point of view. You can think about it as an individual PO, or you can think about it as your PO organization. So it could be aggregated as well. But I want you to think about it. What is quadrant 1 for you is my point. I'll give you some heuristics, but I want you to think about, oh, this is our quadrant 1. This is what we do. So for me, product management is some things that could be in there are champion and evangelist. You're the product champion. You're evangelizing the product. That's not just internally, that's externally as well. That's both. So you're doing both sides of that. You're establishing the vision. You're creating the vision. You're sharing the vision. Storytelling is actually something that I think is a skill in quadrant 1 from a product management point of view, of being an effective storyteller, connecting the dots. Product and release roadmap. Speaking of connecting the dots, you're connecting the dots from a where are we going point of view. Managing expectations. There's a challenging one in this quadrant. Managing leadership expectations, managing customer expectations. Like everyone wants everything tomorrow. And how do we manage the unfolding of a product? Measurement could fall in here as well. Not only measuring progress, but measuring ROI. Measuring, sort of having targets, and then measuring, are we achieving those targets? We're looking for 50% covering 50% of our current client base. And then are we actually realizing that? So looking at ROI targets, looking at usage targets, looking at some other targets. Supporting infrastructure inside the company, marketing and sales. Make sense to everyone? These could be things, activities. Engaging customers in feedback, doing road shows, getting feedback from clients, evaluating usage from that point of view. Look at personas, developing personas could be a part of this as well. It could be a part of business analysis. I hope you're getting a sense for where this quadrant is. I just noticed that they changed their names. There was a company called Pragmatic Marketing, and I think now there's something else. I forget the name, but they've renamed themselves. But they talked about product management as a skill, as a craft, as a profession, and they developed this flowchart for all of the activities that are in product management. And the reason I use it here, when I was writing the first edition of the book, I looked at product ownership and I mapped Scrum product ownership stuff to the product management framework from Pragmatic Marketing. And out of, I think they have like 40 boxes, 40 activities, only like 11 activities, product owner activities mapped. And what that resonated with me is product ownership is a subset, can be potentially a subset of what product management really is, what it can be as a profession. So you have to expand your view of product ownership very often, as maybe as Scrum defines it. And that's part of it. So I speak in terms of Pragmatic Marketing is the outwardly facing quadrant. So I would look at this as being largely It's not outwardly facing to clients, to the business and things like that. So with that being said, I want you to get into your, I'm going to give you about a minute. I want you to think about your context, and I want you to think about the attributes that I had, and I want you to map them to your context. What parts of that do I do? What parts fall in there that he didn't even mention? And I want you to think about how much time you spend, either you personally spend, your organization spends, or a client, you observe your client. As a coach, you observe your client. How much time do they spend in quadrant 1 activity, typically? To 10% clarity. All right, everyone? So I'll give you a minute. Really do a deep dive in your thinking. Really try to capture how much time are we spending there. Also capture the tasks, the activities. If they're not clear, capture activities and percent to 10% clarity. You have about 30 seconds. Okay. Oh, gosh, I forgot something. Not just how much time you're spending. And again, I'm going to move on to the next quadrant, but how much time should you be spending there? You with me? There's a difference. So I want you to capture both sides of that equation. How much time are you spending there? And is there a deficit? Should you be spending more? So I'm spending 20% of my time there, and I should be spending 40% of my time there. And here's some of the activities in quadrant 1. And just capture that on that sheet of paper. Cool. I want to go to quadrant 2. And this is the same exercise is going to repeat. So keep that paper there, start thinking. So what is project management stuff as a product? And all of this is under the banner, from my point of view, of product ownership. So I hope this is not for the faint of heart. Product ownership is a really serious thing, and there's a lot of activities. So what are some quadrant 2? Chartering, project chartering. There's a wonderful book called Liftoff. So to me, agile chartering, project chartering is captured by Liftoff, that book, and it's lifting off. How do you instantiate a project? Shorter and longer term planning. Yes, I mentioned the P word. We're doing some planning. We're doing some forecasting. Release management. I actually think if you're in a scaled agile framework environment, there are these folks like release train engineers, and they're guiding trains, multiple teams. I do think the RTE role has a bit of quadrant 2 in it. That's what I'm trying. I'm not saying product owners have to be RTEs. What I'm saying is there's an integration, there's a partnership opportunity there between those roles. Expectation management and communication, clarity of communication. One of the things that I see a lot of value in is like a scrum of scrums. If you've ever seen a scrum of scrums as a synchronization point, and one of the key attributes in the scrum of scrums is the communication from team to team to team, across product owners within themselves, and then across the team. Managing dependency, that's the wrong way. Maybe identifying dependencies, making dependencies transparent, making them visible. Management sounds like you're managing them. I'm not meaning to imply that, but you're making them visible and transparent to the teams and inspiring them to sort of coordinate those dependencies amongst themselves. Another part of that is product owners working together when you're doing aggregate, when you're doing larger scale products. I always feel like product owners have a responsibility when they take a large backlog and split it into team level backlogs to be thoughtful about the dependencies between the teams. So creating simplified dependency maps starts with product owners working together and being thoughtful. It's not just dump it to the teams and say, well, they need to sort out the dependencies. There's thoughtful decoupling, and product owners can do a great job of that, sort of pre-decoupling dependencies for the team. Milestones, thinking about risk as we unfold a product with the team. All of these aren't in a vacuum. You're not dictating to the team, but you're coordinating with your team. Think of it as that. I very often think of the Scrum Master role and the product owner role as like a conductor role in a symphony, and you're conducting the team. Regulatory concerns and budgeting concerns. So there's things like that are quadrant 2 level activities. One thing I want to inspire you to think about is I want you to create backlogs that are a tapestry. I love it. I've used this metaphor for years. I see so many crappy backlogs. I'll define what that means in a second, but in the field. And to me, a crappy backlog is a backlog that just has features in it. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen that. I call it feature-itis, where you have a backlog and it's just get more stuff done. We're pushing more sausage out of the factory as much as we possibly can. And there's no nuance. It's all maybe new work. Or if you're doing maintenance, it's all bug fix work and there's no other things. And I think while that's a simple backlog and it is a backlog, I don't think it's a well orchestrated backlog. What I want to see threads of concern through your backlog. Well, and I wanted to see that like a well-woven tapestry. What are some of the threads? Features, value increments. Are you thinking of architecture? Is there architectural look ahead in your backlog somewhere? Design. Are you doing spikes? If you've ever heard of user story spikes or research spikes, I think in terms of have you sprinkled them effectively? Have you and your team sprinkled spikes effectively through the backlog in order to mitigate technical risk, in order to manage look ahead? Do you have quality concerns being managed? Do you have testing concerns? Regulatory, dependency, like I was saying, are you identifying and simplifying dependencies? Goals, unfolding it from a tempo point of view. All of those things you can see in the backlog. So I don't want it to just be feature, large scale feature. That's part of it. But think of your backlog. Part of quadrant 2 activity and investment and the craft is this well-woven backlog. And you're not weaving it yourself. You're listening to your team. I think an incredibly important part of this is listening to your team. Refactoring. Did I mention refactoring? I don't know if I mentioned refactoring. Are we refactoring the base? Would be another one of those threads that I'm looking for. So enough of that. Let's go back. So you have quadrant 1 in the bag. I want you to think about quadrant 2, not what Bob said. Those are just characteristics, but map it to what should I be doing? What is that in my context? And then identify some of those context points, those activities, and then how much time am I spending there and how much time should I be spending there? And I'll give you 60 seconds for that. Oh, if you have any spare time, you can go back to quadrant 1, right? You can be balancing across both of them. So if you miss something, jot it down. I'd like this paper to get a little bit rich with scribbles. So that'd be kind of cool. Got about 20 seconds left. Okay, we're going to move on to the next quadrant. If I can get the arrow going in the right direction. Leadership. And I think this is an important one. And I would call this like little L leadership, probably not big L. So I'm not implying that you have an org chart title I'm not referring to your title. I'm not referring to your role. So you could have a formal leadership role or not. I actually don't care. From a quadrants point of view, this is little L leadership. And I think I wrote a blog post once that I think it was something like 12 ways or 20 ways that a product owner can rip the soul out of a team. And there was all of these ways, like activities that a product owner can do that demoralizes the team. And then I had a counter blog post that talked about and 12 ways that they can re-energize their team. And a lot of those criteria, those activities, to me, are related to leadership. Is how are you showing up to the team, and what leadership are you providing to your team? So, for example, vision and mission. I'll even say, I'll add that, cross that out, and say the why. I'm really bullish nowadays that I think leaders in agile context, we should be talking about why every day, 5 times a day, 10 times a day. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? We should be why-inators from the point of view of really socializing the why. No, not just telling someone it's important or telling someone what to do. In fact, never do that as a product owner. Always explain sort of the problem we're trying to solve, the challenge for the client. Why are we doing it? Organizational alignment. Are you aligning up and down from a product point of view? Are you aligned with your product owner colleagues in your organization? Are you aligning with technical leadership? Are your priorities aligned? Have you socialized them across the organization? Managing expectations again, and this is but from a leadership perspective. Like even when it's not, even when it's dangerous, managing expectations. Leadership team is telling your team to deliver 800 points per sprint. Your team's capacity is 40. You need to manage those expectations, right? And that could be a very dangerous, that could imply saying no to someone. No. We do not have 800 points worth of capacity. We have 40. And so really managing that, protecting your team, being a champion for your team, trusting your team. I've seen so many product owners that argue with the team during estimation. They're trying to negotiate the estimation. There is an alternative to negotiating downward. It might be trust the team. They do this for a living. If you have a good team, trust their estimates. Be value-driven, quality-driven. Another way of saying that is reinforcing, do it right the first time. Let me repeat that. Do it right, build quality in, don't clean it up later. So make sure that you're creating that space, that mindset in your teams for that. Leveraging your team's strengths. That may sound odd, but I want product owners to be thinking about what is part of their ordering and the prioritization should be, what kind of work is my team good at? What type of work do they get excited about? And maybe that's the type of work we want to give them. So there's business priority, but there's also sort of building the team resiliency, building energy within the team, and looking at both sides of that. A really important one here as a product owner is showing vulnerability. I would like every product owner, product manager, chief product owner, I would like you to have a burn up chart or a burn down chart that talk about how many times did you say, I don't know? Or how many times did you ask the team, I don't know, I have to find out about that. Or even better yet, you ask for help. Ask your team for help. Hey, I have this idea. What do you all think? Help me craft a solution to that. The more you can do that, the more you're inspiring your team, you're engaging your team. And then storytelling is another part of that, active part of that. I don't know if any of you have ever done like a CSM or a Scrum class or something. A lot of people have done that. And we talk about the Scrum values almost as it's for the team. And I actually want to take the Scrum values and inject it into product owners. So it's not just about the team. It's about so as a product owner, we need to live commitment. We need to live focus. You need to be open. You need to be respectful. And one of my favorites is you need to have courage, the courage to say no, the courage to say yes, the courage to protect your team, the courage to challenge your team in an effective way. So these aren't just these intangible things for the team. These are things to live by as under the leadership quadrant. These are things to live by. These are things to step into leadership in your organization. One of my favorite product owners that I work with, and this was 15 years ago, is Link Walls. Link Walls is a chief product owner, or he's got a senior role at a company here where I live in North Carolina. And when I worked with Link, he was a simple PO of a team that I was coaching several teams. And Link did something that I thought was odd at the time. He invited his teams occasionally to pizza lunches, and he talked about the competitive landscape of his product. There were competing products. Microsoft had one. Google was developing some things that were competing with us. So what Link was doing was talking about the feature by feature competitive landscape. And I remember at the time in my fervor to get stuff out the door, I was like, Link, we don't have time for that, right? That we need to be getting stuff out the door. And I had this, sort of aha moment when I heard his team start becoming mini me's of Link. And it resonated with me. They said in a backlog refinement session, one of the team members or the team was like, we don't need that feature. We already have that over here. They also argued for a customer feature, and they argued it down and they argued it up, and they split them. And they did that not to argue, they did it because they started becoming mini Links. Does that make sense to everyone? He was trying to create mini POs in every team member. And the thing that resonated with me is the team started delivering better products. They started going, not that this is the point, they started going faster because they started delivering efficiently. They reduced waste. They were doing what the clients needed. And Link wasn't everywhere to figure that out. So part of leadership to me is having the confidence and the courage to share that role that you have. And he did a wonderful job of that. And he took that along his journey as a product owner. So I want to come back to the leadership quadrant. Same rule, 60 seconds. That was my view. What does leadership look like in your context? Remember that list of activities. And then how much time are you spending there? And how much time should you be spending there? 60 seconds. And you can revisit the other three. So if you're inspired in this quadrant, you want to change a number in a previous one, you can go back. You're balancing across the three with a focus on the leadership. You have about 10, let's see, I'm trying to think. About 10 seconds left. Okay. I think you should be getting some scribbles on your electronic or physical paper. And we only have one more quadrant. How cool is that? So we're almost done. I know that Joanna and Peter are like, oh my God, we're going to be done early. How's that going to happen? What are we going to do with the extra time? They're worried about it. I can feel it coming through. But not to worry, there might be some questions. So if anyone has any questions, you want to be jotting some questions down because we're going to have time for Q&A. Fourth quadrant, it's probably the easiest, at least to me, it's the easiest quadrant to get your arms wrapped around for product ownership. And that may be true or untrue, but for me it is. It's what I call the BA quadrant. And it's a place, so what are some of the activities in the BA quadrant? And I'm not trying to turn you into a business analyst. I'm not trying to get into org chart wars, so that's not the point. But requirements, the ask. That could be traditional requirements, that could be agile requirements, whatever. Personas, And user stories. This is the land of user stories. This is the land of acceptance criteria. This is the land of doneness and readiness, if you're familiar with those terms, right? So definition of done, definition of ready. This is the land where we're thinking about spiking. So this is an extension of the backlog. This is the extension. This relates a lot to the project management quadrant. Confirmation and sign off. Backlog refinement. One of the richest activities, I think, that a product owner engages in. I see too much sort of poorly done refinement in the world. Still to this day, I think people struggle with backlog refinement. And it's one of the central sort of activities in this quadrant where you're clarifying, you're slicing, you're sizing, you're prioritizing, etc. I want to ask, I can't see, I can only see Joanna and Peter, but that's okay. Has anyone ever seen a sprint? Have you two seen a sprint where folks bite off some amount of points and then we carry over? We carry over points to the next sprint. So the team may commit to 40 points and they carry over 20 points or something.
Yeah.
Or
all the time. Yeah.
So a carryover. Or if you've ever seen a team where a story like blows up in their face, like they think it's an 8-point story and it's like a landmine. And I'm not trying to be violent here, so please. It's just like hits them. We think it's 8 and it turns out to be like 400 points. And it's like, and the entire sprint blows up, right? So lots of carryover or a story that just blows up in your face. And I see that a lot. And folks are like, well, what do we do to correct that? And one of the things the correlations I see is that's related to a lack of refinement. The team is not looking ahead enough or not spending enough time in refinement. I hear this all the time. We're behind in the sprint, so we don't have time for refinement. Everyone with me? Right? I hear that over and over again. That's fine. It's sort of a pay me now, pay me later. So you can refine and pay me now, or it's going to blow up in your face later. That's your choice, and well done refinement can really save you. So I would encourage you to think about refinement, maybe run an experiment where you invest in it. So that's a BA activity. Allowing for emergence is something that I want you to think about as a BA. Writing stories at only 20% clarity or 30% clarity. There's a coach I think Jura Maureen is a coach in Canada, and he has this wonderful curve where he talks about the maturity or the definition of the clarity of a user story. And he talks about, I want stories to enter the sprint planning at about 20 to 30% clarity. And I know that even makes the hair on the back of my neck stick up a little bit, but the point he's making is we don't have to get it 100% clear up front. So there's refinement is intended to get it good enough. Then the activity of sprint planning is going to move it from 30% to 60%. Everyone with me? So before it enters the sprint, we need to get it about to 30%. In sprint planning, that activity, invest in it, 30 to 60% clarity. Well, we get it to 100% clarity at the end of the sprint. So when does that happen? That happens while we're executing, while we're collaborating as a team. So to me, that's indicative of this notion of allow emergence. Don't get stuck in the problem space of trying to define everything too early in too much detail. It's intended as part of Agile to allow this emergent understanding. So do effective look ahead, but not too much. Effective spiking, but not too many spikes, right? Allow emergence to happen. Experiment, do prototypes, have mock-ups, paper, MVPs, etc. So, and so don't rush. And the product owner is guiding this. Yes, the team is participating. Yes, the Scrum Master is participating. But I think of the product owner is creating the space for emergence. And it's important to do that. I mentioned storytelling earlier as part of product management, and it is, and part of communicating and managing expectations. If there's a few things that I'd like you to take away from this. One of them that's important is I want I want to move from a product owner is writing requirements or in user story form to we are becoming storytellers. I'm old enough to be around when extreme programming was, when user stories were in their infancy. And the story was an index card. And we would scribble notes on the index card, but we would talk, the product owner or the customers would talk about the intent. The words on the card were inspiration to tell a story. It was almost like we were around a campfire telling stories of what problem we're trying to solve. What does the customer client really need? They would communicate their pain. They would communicate their needs. The team would be like, oh, I get it. Oh, I'm inspired. Yes, what do you think about this? And there was the notion not of requirements, that checklists that we would execute, but there was the notion of telling a story. And the story, superseded the words. It gave us a vision for each. I want to get us back to this notion of storytelling with your team. And it's not a waste of time. And it can be part of backlog refinement. It can be part of that emergence during the entire activity, from pre-sprint to planning to sprint execution, is storytelling. So I want to go back, same exercise. I know it's getting boring, but it's the last quadrant. So 60 seconds, business analysis. How do you map up? What are the activities that you have to do in this quadrant? 10% clarity. How much time am I spending there? How much time should I be spending there? Okay. Now what I want you to do is an extension of the last section. I want you to take a step back, and I want you to look at the landscape in front of you. You have 4-quadrant landscape. Percentages, where am I spending? Where do I need to be spending? And I want you to rebalance it in total. Everyone with me? I want you to potentially balance, rebalance. Look at it as a portfolio. And you only have 100% of your time. You with me? You may be actually over allocating yourself. So maybe you want to evaluate it 150%. However you want to load yourself, that's fine. But rebalance your quadrants. I want to give you 30 seconds or so to rebalance. This is an opportunity to change some numbers and look at it holistically. And you're thinking about the most effective use of your quadrants to meet the needs of your company, of your context. Cool. Everyone rebalanced. Good. A little bit of interaction here. I hope you don't mind. A little bit, giving you a little bit of work to do. I have some really bad news though. So I've been misleading you all along the way. And I have to add something. So I have some unfortunate news. There's a 5th quadrant, and I don't know how to fit it in. It doesn't fit my metaphor. But that's tough because we have to fit it in anyway. So there's a 5th quadrant. And I'm not even going to make you guess. Here it is. It's you. It's you. It's self. It's the product owner. So I'm going to talk about, what do I mean by this? Self-care. So forget quadrant balance. Are you balanced? Are you overloaded? Are you self-aware? Are you spending time on personal growth and learning? And this workshop doesn't count. This webinar doesn't count. I'm kidding. It counts. But are you learning? Are you growing? Personal happiness. Are you doing what you love to do in the quadrants? So if you love BA work, that's fine. Then embrace that. But your team needs holistic support as a product owner. So maybe you need to partner with someone and figure that out. Encouraged. Are you engaged? Are you trusted? You with me? One of the biggest complaints I hear from product owners is like, well, I'm a product owner in name only, right? The organization doesn't really trust me fully. Or I always get second guessed. Does that resonate with anyone? Right? I'm a product owner, but I have to check with 5 levels of the organization to get approval for making a priority decision. But so it's not really empowered. Do you have time to build relationships, partnerships? Are you emotionally intelligent in the organization? So the 5th quadrant, there's a wonderful post by Len Legacy, who's a coach, I think in the West, a part of the US. And he talked about happiness. Are you happy? And here's some attributes of happiness. You're immersed. You have the opportunity to be immersed with your client, your customer. Number 3, it's the counterpoint to what I was saying. You have true ownership of your product. You have true trust to your product. They have a positive working relationship with your Scrum Master. You're like 2 peas in a pod. They're proud. Number 7, you're proud of what your team is delivering. They've embraced their constraints, and you're keeping yourself healthy, by whatever means is important for you. I want to emphasize, if anyone's ever done it, if you've watched this video, I want you to watch it again. If you've not watched it, I want you to watch it. There's a Steve Jobs. I'm a bit of a Steve Jobs fan from a public speaking, from a passion point of view. I'm not saying he's perfect. He had his foibles as a leader of Apple. But this is a commencement video at Stanford University. And he talks a lot about doing what you love. And as product owners, I think the most successful product owners, you don't want to do it because someone twisted your arm. We need to get ourselves in a position of we love what we do. I love what I do. I love coaching. I love talking about it. I think that affects the quality of our output, the quality of our engagement. So I want you to view that video and do a self-check, right? Am I investing in myself? Am I in the right place? What am I doing from a 5th quadrant point of view? So I want to come back. Remember I said balance your quadrants? Now I want you to go back and rebalance, and you need to invest some time in you. So how do you fit that in? So I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do an entire rebalancing of the quadrants, inserting the 5th, and really thinking about where you need to be spending your time and where you need to be asking for help. All right, 60 seconds. And darn it, don't short shrift you. I would argue that the most important quadrant is yourself. If you're not taking care of yourself, you are potentially going to suck at the other quadrants. So you want to make sure that you're tidying up yourself. You got about 30 seconds left. Okay. So here's some keys to good. we're almost done. So if you have some questions, get ready. Nobody can, I think nobody can fulfill all aspects of the product owner role. I'm not saying we need multiple POs. We need one, but I think they need help. They need partners, and they need to be open to partnership, particularly at scale. Keys to good: ask for help. Have the courage to ask for help when you need it. Establish partnerships. Trust your team. Reach out to your team. Remember Link, mini-me's. Everyone with me. Mini-me's, mini-me's. That's a takeaway I want. One of your jobs should be creating mini-me's. You could have mini-me's at a leadership point of view, mini-me's at a peer level, mini-me's at a team level. Empower yourself. Make sure, engage your customers, deliver value, and then grow yourself. Don't starve your growth. Are, I think, keys to good. The meta key to good is I see too much, and I started out with this. I see imbalanced product owners in the real world. They're spending too much time for whatever reason in one quadrant, and they're starving the other ones. And in order to be an effective product owner, you need to be balancing across all 4+1. If you're with me, you need to be balancing based on your context. You can't go to your comfort zone. You can't just go there. You need to make sure they're all covered, not by you, not necessarily by you, but based on our organizational context. Have I orchestrated cover effectively for all quadrants in a balanced fashion? And I think most product owners don't answer that very well. So a healthy balance across all 4 quadrants +1 is the real key. And that's it. Very simple model, very simple meta, I think a relatively simple metaphor. I'd like you to start assessing. So final recommendation, assess yourself. We did a little bit of it here, but do a deeper dive. I encounter some communities of practice in product ownership and things like that. And it's one of the things, do a deep dive, reflect, see how we gain cover. With that, I want to thank Peter and Joanna again for having me. And I don't know if there's any questions, but now would be a good time.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Mihaela. Can you elaborate on expectation setting, as this is an element included in the 3 quadrants?
So I think expectations of one of the keys that I'm thinking about is capacity of the team, Joanna, or whoever's asking that question. I think a product owner needs to be intimate with the actual capacity of their team. And they need to be able to effectively manage organizational expectations, customer expectations to the reality of the team. And I see so much, like there's too much whip and there's too much expectations of the team. There's too much hope. There's too much wishful thinking, and there's too much hopeful thinking. So if the team if it's an inexperienced team, and their velocity is very turbulent, then don't overcommit the team. So managing those expectations, talking about capacity, talking about the reality, ensuring priority. The other part of expectation setting, I don't know if everyone has viewed it. There's a wonderful product owner video by Henrik Nyberg, who is a very experienced coach out of Sweden. And you can Google it. It's Henrik, K-N-I-B-E-R-G. It's a 15-minute video. And I want all of you to view it. I've probably viewed it hundreds of times, but I want you to view it 5 times. And there's a little snippet in there where he says the most important job of a product owner is to say no. Saying yes to an ever-growing list of features is easy and not useful. Our job is to actually divert activity based on the team's capacity. I'm paraphrasing what he's saying. And that's one of those, that to me is a managing expectations, because there's tremendous pressure to do more. And that's why I was talking about those attributes.
And that video is very easy to watch, and it's also very easy to understand. So every time I play that video to the team, I got the feedback that it's easier and they understand what the product owner is. So it would be very, very good to play to your teams or just to watch it.
Absolutely. Joanna, I play to leaders very often when I'm doing like a I'm introducing leaders to the dynamics of Scrum or the dynamics of Agile. I actually will play that for them to give them sort of a thumbnail sketch to drive Q&A. It's a wonderful video for that. And it's deceptively complex.
Yes.
So, right. It really is. It really captures a lot of nuance. I've captured probably 2 pages of notes from it about lessons that it's trying to communicate for the balance. That's actually something I should add to these slides. One of the reasons for the quadrants is I am a proponent that product ownership is a skill, a craft, a profession. It's not something you do in your spare time. It's hard work. It's a full-time job, et cetera, et cetera. So that video, if you really dig underneath it, can help understand, hey, it's not a part-time, it's not something I do in my spare time. It requires intense focus. To do it well, you can do it poorly any way you want, but if you really want to invest in the craft and the profession of product ownership, then it's a full-time job.
Yes, and the other thing I think, Bob, is very important to understand that organizations, as they set up an agile team, they tap somebody on the shoulder and they say, okay, now you will be the product owner. Without any type of introduction to the role or any type of overview what the role is, and they get parachuted into a team, and depending on whether that team has an agile coach or not to coach the product owner, or the type of introductions they are offered. But that's the thing, the preparation is missing in most organizations that I deal with. And it's just part of that journey, right? We want to make sure that we prepare these product owners for the role. And any new role, as we introduce, should have that career path. Like we did that with the project managers, right? You start as a project control officer or project analyst, and then you evolve into the project management role. With the product owners, it's mostly somebody who knows the business and has been doing other jobs before, and then we just say, oh, now you'll be the product owner. And by the way, there is this complexity around the role.
Yep. We don't land it well. Two quick ideas, and I mentioned one earlier, is this notion of a community of practice. If you don't have a product owner community of practice, try to inspire creating one, which is a group of product owners helping one another learn, grow, sharing lessons and practices. The other thing is, if you're parachuting someone in, at least have the courtesy to mentor them with someone. So set them up with a pair. I would recommend that. And it's not just product owners, Joanna. I see that happening with Scrum Masters as well. People just, you just declare someone a Scrum Master, declare someone a product owner. And both of those roles are incredibly, I think, nuanced and really crucial to effective outcomes. And so the more care and feeding you give to those 2 roles, the better off the outcomes are.
Right.
Anything else? Any other questions? I think we're actually at the end of the time. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I just want to thank you all. So I don't know if you have some closing remarks, but there you go.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and thank you, Bob, for a very entertaining talk. It's just amazing how quickly the time went by. And thank you to our attendees for attending and for those watching on the recording. So again, appreciate your time, Bob, and sharing your insights about the 4+1 quadrant. And I think it's always important to remember ourselves. And again, I agree with your guidance that you gave us, is that we don't have to be perfect or expert in all 4 quadrants. We just need to know which ones we're good at and which ones we're not, and surround ourselves with people to complement us. And that's one of the great lessons I learned around leadership, is knowing yourself and then not being afraid to surround yourself with people that complement your skills rather than trying to be everything. So this will be our final webinar for this year. So thank you very much for all those who have watched and listened to our webinar. Hopefully you have a nice holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you next year, where we'll have some more interesting, engaging webinars for you. Please keep in touch with us. Check out our website for more details on our webinar and other activities that we're doing. So thank you very much, and have a great holiday season, and all the best for 2022.